Beautiful 1986 Chevy Camaro. V6 engine, 5-speed. Runs like a bandit, but over 3,000 RPMs it got really rattly. The harmonic balancer, new harmonic balancer helped out a little bit, but today we're doing motor mounts, and this video is going to be how to install motor mounts in this Chevy Camaro. Ignore all that. Fender is up next. So I already did the driver's side, and right next we're going to do the passenger side. You can see the difference. This is a new one, and this was the old driver's side. You can see how it's all munched up. Rubber's real hard, not really absorbing vibration very well. So that's a change that we're going to make. One thing, before we do this, we're going to need one special tool, which is the spring compressor. I'll show you guys how it works when it's time to use it, but this is it. And for this car, what I need to do is get this little sleeve. You can really use any pipe. I actually cut a piece of motorcycle handlebar. You need this sleeve as a spacer. I'll show you guys what I mean when we get to there. So first step is jacking up the car, blocking it, taking the wheel off on the side that we're working on. Speaking of someone who has had a car fall on him, I always use jack stands and I throw the rim underneath the car just for safety. It was very unpleasant. Alright, so now we're going to orient ourselves to figure out what we got to do to get this thing out. First off, right here is the control arm. This is going to be removed. You got your pivot pin right in here and another one right there. Those both are going to be removed. This is your front spring. It's going to be compressed because if we were to remove both of those bolts without compressing this thing, it would just shoot right down and rock it down. We'd never be able to push it back up. So we're going to use our special compressor tool to compress that. I got mine for like 10 bucks on eBay. You can rent them from various auto parts stores too. What else we got? Alright, the reason that we're taking the control arm out is that the motor mount bolts are way up in there, and God help you if you try to get those 3 bolts out without getting this thing out of the way. It's hard enough getting this thing out of the way, but trying to reach in there and get them out, not going to happen. So that's what we got to do. First thing I'm going to do is compress the spring. Show you that next. Alright, so this is how this works. Basically what we're going to do is feed this up inside the spring and then hook it just like this over the topmost springs that we can get it, also all the way up, and it wants to sit right in the middle. So if this is the spring, it wants to sit just like that. Okay, so once this is dangling down inside the spring, this one comes up, screws into it. You got your bottom hooks here, and then you screw it until the spring compresses. If you were to be taking the spring off, see, we're not going to be taking off the control arm completely, just going to be sort of sliding it out the way. But if we were to be taking the control arm off and the spring off, then obviously we would need this hooked into the bottom spring. However, since we're not doing that and I want to keep this spring in place so I don't have to align it later, I'm going to hook this on the under part of the control arm. So I'm going to show you guys once it's all set up and compressed. I'll show you what I mean. It seems to help seat everything a little bit nicer if you support the control arm a little bit, and that helps the spring compress. So you see here, we're hooked up on the top ring or the top spring there, and we're underneath the control arm here. And now I just tighten it until it compresses the spring. Alright, so you don't have to crank the spring down all the way, just enough that it's sort of held into place. So we see it's compressed a good amount there. What we're going to be doing now is taking out these pivot bolts. We got one here, and then one on the other side, right here. Now the trick to these is you take the bolt out, or rather you take the nut out, but you don't remove the bolt just yet. So we take both nuts out until they're loose, and then we're going to support this side of the control arm with the jack, sort of jack it up a little bit, and pull them both out at the same time. Then the control arm just sort of like chunks down. You get that out of the way, and we can start going after the motor mount. Alright, so I got the nuts out of the pivot bolt. You can see it came loose a little bit. Oh. And on this side as well, there we go. I remember from the last side that these bolts here are a little bit recalcitrant to remove. I have my jack supporting up the swing arm a little bit, or rather the control arm, but I had to just sort of bang them out with a hammer last time, so that's what I'm going to do. Alright, so both bolts are out. You can see that the swing arm just sort of chunks down out of the way, and now we can access those bolts that are up in there. Motor mount bolts. There's 3 bolts that connect the motor mount onto the frame of the car, and then there's 1 bolt that connects the rubber part of the motor mount to the bracket that holds it to the motor. So there's 4 bolts in total that we need to get out of there. No particular trick to doing it, just got to get in there with your wrench and socket set and get on it. Now this is how you jack the motor up to get a little bit more space so you can slide the motor mount out. Block of wood, top of a jack, put that underneath the oil pan and just sort of gently raise it up. Alright, so that part took me about 45 minutes just to get those 4 bolts out, but got them out I did. Nasty, nasty. You can see the jack with the block of wood supporting the car, or supporting the engine. So now we got the new one over there, and just gonna throw it in the same way I took it out. Alright, so after learning a bunch of new swear words that I didn't even know I knew, got the new motor mount in, and all 4 bolts are bolted up tight. Now what we got to do is realign the control arm here, put it back in its little place that it goes, put the pivot bolts back in, and then release the tension on the spring. The good thing about clamping the spring compressor down on the other side of the control arm like I did was that it holds it in place, because if you were to take this thing out and it moves, you have to make sure that you mark where it was so you can seat it properly. But now it's being held exactly where it was, and so I don't have to worry about that. So I'm going to get my jack, support that side of the swing arm in, line those bolt holes up, and drive the pins in. Home stretch here. Control arm is back on. Now all I gotta do is I'm gonna put my jack underneath this side of the control arm, give it a little bit of lift, and then I'm going to release the spring compressor here. That'll just fall right out, and then we throw a wheel on and we're good to go. And so there you go, easy as that. Really wasn't too hard, it just took a long time. The only special tool you need is the spring compressor. Everything else I used was just simple hand tools. And the motor mounts really make a big difference. Before, I always knew when to shift, because right around 3,000 RPMs the vehicle would start to vibrate like crazy. So just took it for a spin. It is smooth as ice. Really, really pleased with the results. And so yeah, I encourage anyone with a rattly Camaro to go ahead and give this a try. Take it easy, guys.